Imagine being told your whole life that you were a miracle, that you survived a fire that should have taken everything. But what if one day, you discovered the fire wasn't an accident at all? That's exactly what happened to Emma. And her discovery would change everything she thought she knew about love, lies, and the people who raised her. Stick around till the end because what she finds out will leave you speechless. And before we dive in, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to Kindness Tales Live. Because stories like this remind us that truth, no matter how painful, always finds its way out. Emma grew up in a quiet little town tucked between silver hills and misty lakes, the kind of place where people remembered every face and whispered about every secret. To her friends, she was the cheerful one, the girl with the soft laugh, the one who'd survived a house fire at age 3. The story was almost folklore now. Her parents, Mark and Linda, would tell it every year on her birthday. How the fire started suddenly, how the smoke filled the hallway, and how a firefighter found her unconscious but alive in the corner of her nursery. "You were our miracle," Linda would say, tears glistening in her eyes. And every time Emma would smile, feeling lucky, feeling loved. But behind that story, hidden beneath the ashes of that night, there was something no one ever dared to mention. For years, Emma didn't question it. She wore the faint scar on her shoulder like a badge of survival. She grew up believing her parents had lost everything in that blaze, photos, documents, memories, except her. But as she turned 21, the past began to whisper again, louder this time. It began with a small thing and a burned photograph. She found it one rainy afternoon while cleaning the attic, tucked inside an old music box she'd never seen before. The photo was half burned, edges curled, the image faded but visible enough to make out a child, her, sitting beside a woman who was definitely not her mother. The woman had the same emerald green eyes Emma saw in her own reflection every morning, the same smile, but a gentleness that made Emma's heart ache with a strange familiarity. Her pulse quickened as she turned the photo over. On the back, written in smudged ink, were the words, "For my little Ember, love always, Em." Her breath caught. Em, not Linda, not Mark. Em. She stared at the photo until her hands trembled. Questions she'd never thought to ask started to burn in her mind. Who is the woman? Why was this hidden? And why did her parents never mention her? That night, when she asked her mother casually if they had any other family photos, Linda's reaction was strange. Her usually calm face went pale. She avoided Emma's eyes and said quietly, "Some memories are better left buried." Then she changed the subject. But Emma couldn't let it go. Over the next few days, she started to notice small things that didn't add up. Her birth certificate looked newer than it should. The date on the fire report didn't match what her father had told her, and the hospital she was supposedly taken to didn't exist anymore. It was like every answer led to another locked door. The more she searched, the heavier the air in that house felt. One evening, as she walked past her parents' room, she heard her father's voice, low, angry, shaking. "If she finds out, Linda, we'll lose her. Do you understand? We'll lose her." Her mother sobbed softly, saying, "She deserves the truth." Mark. But Mark's reply chilled Emma to her core. "No, the truth will destroy her." That night, Emma lay awake staring at the ceiling, her mind replaying every word. What truth? What could possibly destroy her now after all these years? The attic photo, her parents' fear, the whispered arguments. Everything pointed to one unbearable possibility. The fire wasn't the tragedy she thought it was. It was the cover-up. And the person who had saved her that night might not have been the firefighter her parents always spoke of. Emma didn't sleep at all that night. The storm outside roared, lightning flashing through her window. And when she closed her eyes, she saw the woman in the photo, smiling, holding her, whispering words she couldn't quite remember. The next morning, she made a decision that would change everything. She would find out the truth, no matter how deep it was buried. The next morning, Emma couldn't shake the image of that burned photograph from her mind. She kept it tucked inside her journal, afraid her parents would somehow find it and take it away. The house felt different now, quieter, heavier. Every creak in the hallway sounded like a secret trying to escape. Her parents acted normal, but she could feel the tension behind their smiles. At breakfast, her father spoke about the weather. Her mother asked about her classes, yet both avoided her eyes. It was as if they knew she had found something, but neither dared to ask what. That silence confirmed it. They were hiding something big, and Emma was done pretending she didn't notice. That weekend, when her parents left for a charity event, Emma decided to search the attic again. The wooden stairs groaned beneath her as dust swirled in the beam of her flashlight. She opened every box, every drawer, hoping for something, anything that could explain the woman in the photo. Then, in an old chest wrapped in a moth-eaten blanket, she found a metal tin sealed with rust. Inside were papers charred around the edges, smelling faintly of smoke. Birth records, hospital notes, and one envelope marked "Private for Emma when she's ready." Her heart nearly stopped. The handwriting was familiar, but not her mother's. It was softer, looping, the same handwriting from the note on the back of the photo. M. Her hands shook as she tore it open. Inside was a letter written in faded ink. "My dearest Emma, if you're reading this, it means they finally told you or you found out on your own. I hope it's the first, but I fear it's the second. I want you to know, I never meant to leave you. That night wasn't an accident. It was set. And I tried to stop it, but there was too much smoke, too much fire, and not enough time. They said it would be safer for you if you never knew the truth. But the truth is, you weren't supposed to be there. You weren't supposed to be with them. And I am so sorry." Emma froze. The words blurred as her eyes filled with tears. You weren't supposed to be with them? What did that mean? Her parents, Mark and Linda Bossy, weren't supposed to have her. Were they not her real parents? She read the letter again and again, her mind racing with questions she couldn't form. Who was M? Her mother? Someone else entirely. And what did they mean the fire was set? She heard a car door slam outside. Her parents were back early. Heart pounding, she stuffed the papers back into the tin and hid it beneath the attic floorboards just as the front door creaked open. "Emma?" her father called. "We're home." She forced her voice to sound steady. "Up here, just cleaning old stuff." Her father's footsteps echoed closer. For a second she thought he'd come up and catch her, but then she heard him laugh faintly and head toward the kitchen. Relief flooded her body, but so did guilt. She wasn't ready to face them, not yet. That night, Emma lay awake again, staring at the letter under her pillow. Every word from M felt like a thread pulling her toward a past that had been deliberately erased. Her parents' story about the fire, how it started, how she was rescued, suddenly seemed rehearsed, too perfect. She thought of the way her mother's hands trembled when she asked about the photo. The fear in her father's voice when he said, "If she finds out, we'll lose her." Lose her to what? Or to whom? The next day, Emma skipped her classes and drove to the county records office. She requested her birth certificate and fire report again, but when the clerk brought them out, she noticed something strange. The birth certificate had been reissued 2 years after the fire, and the fire report listed no survivors. "That can't be right," Emma whispered. "There was a child. There was me." The clerk looked confused. "If there was, she isn't listed here." Emma walked out of the building feeling dizzy. The wind whipped through her hair, and for the first time in her life she didn't know who she was anymore. That night she opened her laptop and typed the name written on the letter's corner, Margaret Ellis. Dozens of results appeared. But one headline made her freeze. Mother and child missing after suspicious house fire, 2004. The photo beneath the headline showed the same woman from the burned photograph, holding a little girl with emerald green eyes, her. Emma couldn't stop shaking as she stared at the screen. The photo, the headline, the date, it all fit. The fire wasn't in her hometown as her parents had claimed. It happened in a small city 3 hours away. And the name Margaret Ellis wasn't some stranger. She was her real mother. Emma printed the article and drove home in silence, her mind racing. Every memory she'd ever had of her parents now felt heavy with doubt. Every bedtime story, every whispered, "We're so lucky to have you." Every time they'd called her their miracle. What if their miracle had come from someone else's nightmare? By the time she reached home, she wasn't scared anymore. She was furious. The moment she saw her parents sitting on the couch, she knew she couldn't pretend any longer. "I know about her," she said, voice trembling. "I know about Margaret Ellis." Her mother froze mid-breath. Her father stood up slowly, his face draining of color. "Emma, where did you hear that name?" "From her letter." Emma said, pulling it from her pocket and slamming it on the table. "The one she wrote to me before she died in that fire you said I survived." Silence filled the room like smoke. Her mother's eyes brimmed with tears, but her father's jaw tightened. "You went digging," he muttered. "You weren't supposed to." Emma's voice cracked. "You lied to me. My whole life." Linda reached out with trembling hands. "Emma, please, let us explain." "Then explain," she screamed. "Tell me why my birth records are fake, why the fire report says no one survived, why you've been hiding who I really am." Linda looked at her husband, tears streaming down her face. "Mark, she deserves to know." But Mark's voice turned cold. "No, Linda, the truth will ruin everything." Emma glared at him. The truth already did. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Linda took a deep breath. "Emma, Margaret Ellis was your biological mother. The night of the fire, she brought you here. She was terrified, shaking, covered in soot. She begged us to take you, said someone was after her. We tried to call the police, but before we could, she disappeared back into the storm. Hours later, we saw the news. The fire had consumed her house. They never found her body. The officials assumed both of you were dead, and we didn't correct them." Emma felt the ground tilt beneath her. You took me? We saved you," her father snapped. "We gave you a life she couldn't." Emma's tears blurred her vision. "You stole me. You let me grow up thinking she died saving me, when you were the ones hiding me from her memory." Linda sobbed quietly. "We were trying to protect you. Margaret was in trouble with dangerous people, Emma. The fire wasn't random. It was revenge." "Revenge for what?" Emma demanded, but neither of them answered. Mark simply turned away, staring at the wall. "You wouldn't understand. What we did out of love." Emma backed away slowly. Love doesn't lie. Love doesn't erase someone's past. Her mother reached out, but Emma pulled back. "Don't touch me." She grabbed the printed article from the table and stormed out of the house. The night air was cold, biting at her skin, but she barely felt it. Her whole world had just been turned inside out. Her car keys rattled in her shaking hand as she got in and started the engine. She didn't know where she was going, only that she couldn't stay there. The letter, the lies, the stolen life, it all echoed in her head like flames crackling in the dark. She drove aimlessly for hours, tears streaming down her face. Finally, she pulled over near a quiet motel by the highway. Inside her car, she reread the article, her mother's letter, every piece of paper she'd stolen from the attic. At the bottom of the old birth certificate, something caught her eye. A name scribbled faintly under witness. It wasn't her adoptive parents' names. It was Detective Harold Vance, a name she'd never heard before. Her heart raced. Maybe he was still alive. Maybe he knew what really happened that night. She pulled out her phone, typed the name into a search bar, and held her breath. The first result read, "Retired Detective Harold Vance, investigator of 2004 Ellis fire case." Her pulse quickened. For the first time, she wasn't just lost, she had a lead. Tomorrow she'd find him, and she'd finally learn who set that fire, and why they wanted Margaret and her gone. Emma barely slept that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw her parents' faces, her mother's tears, her father's cold stare, the word revenge echoing in her mind like the crackle of fire. By morning, her decision was made. She packed a small bag, grabbed the burned photo, the letter, and her printed article, and set out to find Detective Harold Vance. His address wasn't easy to locate, but after several calls to old police records, she finally got a lead. A small cabin by Lake Grayson, 2 towns over. The drive was long, and with every mile, Emma's heart pounded harder. What if he didn't remember? What if he refused to talk? Still, something inside her told her that this man held the key to everything she'd been searching for. The cabin was quiet when she arrived, tucked between pine trees, smoke rising gently from the chimney. Emma hesitated at the door, then knocked. After a moment, it creaked open, revealing an old man with silver hair, thick glasses, and the kind of eyes that looked like they'd seen too much. "Detective Vance?" she asked. He frowned. "Haven't heard that title in years." "Who's asking?" Emma took a shaky breath. "My name's Emma Ellis." The name seemed to hit him like a wave. His eyes widened, his grip on the door trembling. "Ellis?" he whispered. "Dear God, you're alive." He motioned her inside, closing the door behind her. The cabin smelled of wood smoke and old paper. with case files stacked neatly on dusty shelves. "I thought you and your mother died that night," he said, lowering himself into a chair. "We never found her body, only traces of gasoline and blood." Emma sat across from him, clutching the letter in her hands. "I was told I survived a fire, that it was an accident. But now I know it wasn't. My parents, well, the people who raised me, they said she brought me to them, that someone was after her. Do you know who?" Vance sighed heavily, rubbing his temples. "Margaret Ellis wasn't just a mother, Emma. She was a whistleblower. She worked for a pharmaceutical company, Larton Biotech, and uncovered illegal drug trials being tested on children overseas. When she threatened to expose them, her house was set on fire to silence her. We suspected it was the company's doing, but before we could build a case, the entire file was ordered sealed." Emma's stomach twisted. "So she was murdered?" The old detective nodded slowly. "And you were meant to die with her. But someone must have saved you before the fire spread." Emma's breath hitched. "She came to Mark and Linda, my adoptive parents, that night. They said she begged them to take me. But why them?" Vance leaned forward. "Because Mark worked for Larton Biotech at the time. He was one of the company's accountants. I always found it strange that he resigned right after the fire." The words sank in like a blade. "You mean, he was involved?" The detective's silence said everything. "I can't say for sure," he finally murmured. "But it wouldn't be the first time someone on the inside tried to cover their tracks by protecting the evidence, or in this case, you." Emma's hands trembled. "He knew the company wanted us dead, and instead of saving her, he took me and let them think we were both gone." Her voice broke. "He didn't just lie to me. He let them kill my mother." The detective looked at her with pity. "Maybe he thought he was saving you, but he should have told you the truth long ago." Emma felt sick. Everything suddenly connected. Her father's paranoia, the new birth certificate, the warning that the truth would destroy her. He hadn't been protecting her. He'd been protecting himself. Vance handed her an old folder from his desk. "Before I retired, I kept a copy of the sealed file. If you really want to know what happened, it's all here. Reports, photos, statements. But once you open this, there's no going back." Emma looked down at the folder, her reflection faintly visible in its plastic cover. She thought of her mother's letter. They said it would be safer if you never knew the truth. Maybe that had been true once. But now ignorance hurt worse than any secret could. She took the folder in trembling hands. "I need to know," she whispered. As she stood to leave, Vance said quietly, "Be careful, Emma. Larton Biotech isn't dead. They've changed names, but the people behind it are still powerful. If they find out you're alive, they might finish what they started." The wind outside howled as Emma stepped back into the cold. Her breath came out in white clouds. The folder felt heavy against her chest, not just with papers, but with the weight of 21 years of buried truth. She looked out across the frozen lake and whispered, "I'm coming for you, Mom, and for whoever did this." Emma drove back home in silence, the detective's words echoing in her head like sirens. Her father's face, the company name, her mother's letter. Everything now fit like jagged pieces of a puzzle she never wanted to see completed. The truth had always been there, smoldering under years of lies, waiting for her to dig it up. She clutched the folder Vance had given her, her knuckles white, her heart pounding so loudly she could barely hear herself think. When she pulled into the driveway, her parents' car was gone, just as she'd hoped. It was now or never. She walked inside, sat at the kitchen table, and opened the folder. Inside were photos of the burned house, medical records, police reports, and one document that made her blood run cold. A signed authorization form with her father's name, Mark Turner, under the company logo of Larton Biotech. The date was 1 week before the fire. The signature was clear. He had approved the transaction that funded the containment of a whistleblower, Margaret Ellis, her mother. Emma's body went numb. She couldn't breathe. He hadn't just known, he'd ordered it, and when her mother came to him that night begging for safety, he'd let her walk back into the flames. The realization shattered something deep inside her. She didn't notice the tears until one dropped onto the page, smearing the ink. A door creaked open behind her, and she froze. Her father's voice came from the hallway, calm but hollow. "You talked to him, didn't you?" Emma turned slowly. Mark stood there, his expression unreadable. "Detective Vance," he said quietly. He should have left that case buried. His eyes drifted to the folder. "I told you, Emma, the truth would destroy you." Emma stood, her voice shaking. "No, Dad, the truth doesn't destroy like lies do. You worked for them. You signed the order. You killed her." Mark's jaw tightened, his composure cracking for the first time. "I didn't kill her," he shouted, slamming his fist against the wall. "They were going to kill us. You think I had a choice?" Margaret was reckless. She went to the press, she exposed names. "I tried to protect you. She brought you to me that night, begging me to keep you safe. I told her I would, and then she went back to the house. I never knew they'd—" His voice broke, and for a moment Emma saw a flicker of guilt behind his anger. But she wasn't moved. "You let them believe she was dead," she said bitterly. "You let me grow up thinking I was some miracle, when you were the reason she died." Tears filled his eyes as he stepped closer. "Everything I did was to protect you. You don't know what those people are capable of." Emma shook her head. "You're right. I don't. But I know what you're capable of. Lying to me, hiding me, making me live a life built on ashes." She reached into her pocket, pulled out her phone, and pressed play. A small red light blinked on the screen. She'd been recording since he walked in. His eyes widened in shock. "Emma, what are you doing?" "Telling the truth," she said. "The same thing Mom tried to do." For a long, heavy silence, the only sound in the room was the wind outside. Then Mark dropped to his knees, his voice breaking. "You can't do this. They'll come for you too." Emma looked down at him, her tears falling freely now. "Let them. I'm not hiding anymore." She walked past him, grabbed the folder, and stepped outside into the cold night. Behind her, she heard her father whisper, "I'm sorry." But it was too late. Some fires can't be put out. Not the kind that burn in the heart. The next morning, the world woke to a story that sent shockwaves across the country. Whistleblower's daughter exposes corporate cover-up after 21 years. The file, the recording, and her father's signed authorization were everywhere. Larton Biotech, now under a new name, was under federal investigation. Mark Turner was arrested, and for the first time in her life, Emma felt free. She visited her mother's grave, a new one she had made after the investigation uncovered what was left of her remains, and placed the burned photograph on the stone. The same one she'd found in the attic. "You didn't die for nothing, Mom," she whispered. The truth won. The wind rustled through the trees, and for a moment, Emma swore she heard a soft voice, and her mother's, saying, "My little Ember." She smiled through tears, knowing that for the first time, the fire inside her wasn't destroying anymore. It was lighting the way forward.